WTBQ.
Hello, this is Marina K. Solario from the Red Shutters, a full-service decorating and design company located in Warwick, New York on Railroad Avenue, just across from the train station and about an hour north of New York City. We serve our clients every day to introduce style, taste, and help them make good decisions. We're here today on The Style Show, a show about decorating, fashion, and fun. We welcome you, and please encourage your friends to listen. They can log in from anywhere in the world to www.wtbq.com or call in with questions at 845-651-1110. Today we're going to talk about the Chaos to Couture punk show at the Met, and I'm here with my co-host Jude Hammerly.
Thank you.
And if you want to follow along with us and log into the website at any point, our website is www.theredshutters.com, and you can like our Facebook page and follow us along on Twitter. So first of all, let's just talk a little bit about what is your perspective, Jude, on what interior design has to do with fashion? Why do we talk about both of those?
Both are statements we make about ourselves. They are competitive statements. We're comparing ourselves to other people. In general, what we're trying to do by our home decoration and our fashion is either to conform or to rebel or to conform to a rebellion. We're trying to either fit into our surroundings, regardless of how those surroundings fit into the culture as a whole, or we are trying to make a statement of absolute individuality for ourselves. And those such statements are very bold, they're very brave, and they tend to last about 3 seconds, because as soon as anybody does anything cool and original, somebody immediately gloms on and starts to copy them, and a little rebellion forms around them. So, if you think of everything that you're doing, it's almost impossible to think of something that is not either belonging, rebellion, or belonging to a rebellion.
Well, the punk show is certainly a rebellious movement, and a rebellious show about a show about a rebellious movement, let's just say. And at the Red Shutters, of course, our formula is to encourage you to think about traditional, tribal, modern, and fun ways to incorporate various looks into your home, and when you combine all of those, a classic look or a traditional look, a tribal look, a modern and a fun look, you really can make a great statement about yourself and in your home.
Well, that's the best way. I mean, you look around and you say, oh, there are some people in the world who are completely one-dimensional. All they talk about is how many square feet are in their home, or how much money their spouse makes, or that they were Molly Sancton's bridesmaid, or that, they ran into Lou Reed on the street in the Village one time, and you hear the same stories over and over again. But the people that you really like tend to have very broad and diverse identities that are engaging and allow a lot of people of different kinds to be friends with them, and allow them to, allow a lot of people to belong to them in very different ways.
Right. And I want to point out the Costume Institute at the Met originated in 1948, and Diana Vreeland, and they came out with a movie this year called The Eye Has to Travel. She was really instrumental in founding the Costume Institute. The Met has an extraordinary collection of costumes, and yesterday I walked through the show at the Met, and it really is something, because it starts out, kind of with the ripped T-shirt look and the CBGB bathroom that they took from the Bowery downtown, and kind of, this raw, gritty, super punk look. And then as you walk through the show, it escalates into this very beautiful and high-powered and crafted look, which is, a catwalk running through the middle and then arches on either side, highlighting the extraordinary craftsmanship of the various couture houses, including Givenchy, Dior, Vivienne Westwood, and many of the greats, Versace and so forth, who created costumes that Chanel that were in line with this look. And you really can see the quality and the attention to detail that went into these costumes, the textures, the layers. So Why do you think, Jude, this rebellion occurred in the first place? I mean, this occurred, what, about early 70s? It was occurring mostly downtown in the Bowery and in London. Why did this happen? What is this rebellion about? Because this is a real different way for the Met to go. I mean, they're a very traditional museum with extraordinary classical collections from the ages and the centuries, and here they are putting a punk show out at the Met and really sort of shocking everybody and creating a lot of talk on the street and excitement.
Are you asking what the punk rebellion was about in the 70s?
Yeah.
Okay. It started in Andy Warhol's factory in '67, and the Velvet Underground was the house band. And Lou Reed sort of pioneered a very simple way to play the guitar called the drone strum. And it was just very quick licks, very simple. The movement came in the lyrics and the vocals. And, it was said that the first Velvet Underground album only sold 10,000 copies, but every single person who bought one started a band. So it took, some time, almost maybe 7 years or 10 years after, the inspiration of the Velvet Underground for the punk movement to really kick off. And the reason maybe it took so long is because, the movement in '67 was like a direct rebellion against the Beatles, direct rebellion against the Stones, who were in a rebellion against the Beatles, direct rebellion against the Who, that was a rebellion against the Stones, it was a rebellion against the Beatles. And all of a sudden, in '67, people were saying, yeah, but the Beatles are still cool. Yeah, but the Stones are still cool. Yeah, but the Who are still cool. But Led Zeppelin. But by the mid-'70s, the Beatles were old. The Rolling Stones were old. And they're all okay. They're still on stage. Let's just say that. I mean, they got so old that they came back again. And but the important thing is that rock and roll of the classic ilk was starting to wear thin in the mid '70s, and punk, or what they called new wave, was the first rebellion against sort of the classic rock and roll that had been triumphant since the '50s. So it's very simple. Something comes along and it finds an old normal and it seeks to overthrow it and make a new normal, and that's what punk was. It was a rebellion against an old normal, old rockers singing old songs. So
it's about music, not necessarily what was happening in the world with the wars.
It's, listen, at the same time, you have to understand, in the early '70s, you had a very conservative country. So you can't say that the culture was making the punk rebellion happen. We elected President Nixon, reelected him overwhelmingly in 1972, and there he was, basically usurping the Constitution and doing all kinds of other devilish things. But, a lot of people supported him right to the end. So there was, like they say, the silent majority, or this sort of center of the culture was still staunchly conservative, even though there was a hippie movement, there was, anti-this and anti-that movements. The punk movement was specifically a musical movement, but over time, things have unraveled significantly, and we're still in the unraveling phase from that. We're supposed to be united by a war against terror. That never happened. We were never united because I'll tell you why. In World War II, we were united because we were fighting. Our grandfathers over in Europe who were, making some trouble. And in the Civil War, we were fighting our brothers. And that was a coalescing moment. And in the Revolutionary War, we were fighting our fathers. So if you're fighting your fathers and you're fighting your brothers and you're fighting your grandfathers, you can pull the country and the world, together behind something. But if you're fighting an elusive, amorphous enemy, it's hard to unify the country. So we're still dealing with these rebellious things that happened in the 60s and 70s. We have not had that coalescing moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I think one of the hallmarks of the opening, when the Costume Institute opens a show, they do a big gala, and this has been going on since 1948. And this year was an extraordinary gala, actually. And I listened to Robert Verity's comments on the Huffington Post blog this morning, and he was saying how the celebrities really struggled with how to look. They all got a little bit confused. Madonna certainly made a statement. She wore this very short tartan outfit and fishnet stockings, and of course she's in great shape, so she can get away with that. And then some of the ones that did pull it off were maybe Gwen Stefani, who really is kind of a punk musician to begin with, so she's got it figured out. And Anne Hathaway with her short blonde hair, I think, scored also. That was mentioned many times in the press. But who really, he felt, was one of the few that accomplished it was Sarah Jessica Parker, who had this incredible headpiece, who was a high fashion lady, and really came off looking terrific.
Yeah, she looked like a work of art, which makes sense if you go into the Met. Right.
And so you can imagine the extraordinary production. They used 150,000 roses at the entrance, and they, during the gala, and there were so many different kinds of outfits and crazy outfits. The celebrities, I don't think they knew quite what to wear, what to do. They were wearing, elegant gowns, but they were also trying to be, in the punk fashion. So interesting to see, how they presented themselves.
Yeah, punk, it's simple. If you're wearing a very valuable and fancy gown, you don't get it. Because punk was people who really couldn't play guitar, and people who really couldn't sing, and people who really couldn't perform, creating some of the best music that was of our time, because it was simple, it was driven by the vocals, and it was exciting.
Right, it was a real rebellion against luxury. So in the early 70s, that was very prominent. So, and some of the more important, one of the more important designers of that time was Vivienne Westwood. She was a London designer but I'm not sure punk made it into the house so much. What do you think about that? Do you think that there's a punk culture that exists in our decor?
That's a really, really interesting question. I think certainly you see, in the 80s, there was sort of polished punk artwork, and there were polished punk sort of treatments and patent leather and other sorts of textural touches that made it into the home. But it's so extreme. It's a very dangerous place to be experimenting with extremes, your home. Unless you have several homes and you're a very extreme person.
I'm sure if you can hang an Andy Warhol on the wall, that would be part of it.
Yeah, at $8 million a pop, that's a heck of a statement.
And there are original Warhols now being sold down in Chelsea. They're trying to collect them all, and people are buying them, so it's incredible.
In fact, the museums are selling them because they perceive a peak.
Right.
In the market. So why not sell what you have and then buy them back later if you think they're going to soften?
So we have a caller and a guest speaker today. Her name is Lindsay Mulholland. Lindsay, are you there?
I am here. How are you today, Marina?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good morning to both of you.
Lindsay, tell us about, Lindsay is a dress designer and has recently launched her line, Lindsay Mulholland, in New York City about 3 years ago. She operates out of the Fashion District in the 38th Street area and 5th Avenue. Tell us about your company, Lindsay.
Great. So as Marina just said, my company, named for myself, actually, Lindsay Mulholland, is basically a collection of dresses that I've been working on for the past 3 years. What I usually intend to do is to work client by client, and then I also have ready to wear. So I do some custom things. But everything is basically, incredibly wearable, incredibly stylish, and I always say it's like timeless appeal. But we do have a lot of clean, fine lines and everything that's wearable, because I know as a young entrepreneur here in New York City, when you start out in your day, you have your work, and then sometimes you have those after events, or even just as Marina and I had done yesterday at the Met, was to go visit the Costume Institute. So it's really one of those things that you can wear from day to evening, and that's really what I specialize in.
That's great. And Lindsay, yes, was with me yesterday when I walked through the show at the Costume Institute, and then and I did something crazy, and I encouraged her, which I often do in shows, to walk it backwards. So once I leave the show, I go back and I walk in the other direction, and we saw many different things. And what struck me was now. Your designs tend to be more in line with my own style, which is, a little more fussy and not as punky. But, I had an appreciation for what was happening there. Tell me some of the things you picked up on that you saw that were of interest to you.
Definitely. So you can see in that time point when we were talking, and actually as we walked through the first way, going back was a totally different world. So a lot of things that we saw and really appreciated, there was lots of different materials being used. So instead of doing like a fine, chiffon or something for an evening gown, or something very beautiful, or a silk or something like that, there was actually things like paper bags being used, and there was like a lot of things like cellophane. We saw a lot of, the typical things that we would think about when it came to like the 60s and 70s, like the zippers and like safety pins and stuff like that. But we were really kind of like pointing out as we walked through, which is always fascinating, of like, there were all these looks from different places, like from like Prada and Chanel even had like these looks too, which was fascinating. And I think we said before, like the Chanel look was like that skirt and jacket combo, just with like holes and stuff in it. So it was really interesting to see that. But I think what I liked most, there was like a collection of a few of them. There were like light colors, white, bright, but they had like a shiny kind of cellophane sort of look to them, which was very interesting.
But the jacket with the pearls all stringed down.
Oh, the jacket with the pearls was phenomenal. It was very beautiful.
It's sort of this high-low combination. They put the tartan with the ripped T-shirt, or the ripped fishnets.
Right. And to take that plastic bag maybe and do some draping with it. Like we were talking about, the shape of the dress was phenomenal. We were like, oh, we would wear that, except for it's made out of like plastic bags.
Right.
So, I mean, it was really great, and I thought it was a great exhibit to see.
How did you get into the business, Lindsay? What inspired you?
Okay, so when I started, actually, whenever people ask me that, I always end up saying it's like a lifelong dream and almost a legacy within my family. I was taught to sew at quite a young age. I had a grandmother who was incredibly stylish, and I always saw her wearing all these really great clothes. And my other grandmother also enjoyed accessories, so we always were like a shopping kind of thing. We had shoes and handbags and clothes and all the time, and I loved going through what they had and loved putting things together, drawing my own. I loved starting out from an early age. I was like pinning things onto a dress form or looking through magazines and making collages of all like the looks that I liked, or maybe some of the older movies that I watched growing up as a teenager too, where I was really inspired by like the costume design and like trying to decipher what people wore when and why and how that influences us today.
Mm-hmm. And you do trunk shows, and I know recently you did a fashion show at the Mount Vernon Hotel Museum, which we're both involved with. Tell us about that.
Sure. So a lot of my photo shoots and things of that sort, I love to do something that's very bright and very cheerful and very fun. I think women of all ages love, to kind of look back and think of the things they might have used to like, including things like we had a tea party once for our photo shoot, and I made like these tiny little hats to wear for tea, and we had gloves. And that's similar to what we did at the Mount Vernon Hotel the other week, where we had a garden, this fantastic garden, and we did like a live show, which included a lot of the dresses that I'm doing now, but all in this season. But also we had some great sun hats and some like pearls and, the bright lipstick and gloves and everything like that. So it was very fun, and to have like a beautiful, beautiful natural backdrop like that was, unbelievable and a great opportunity. So it went really well.
So when you say those tiny hats, you mean the fascinators that Kate wears, Kate Middleton wears all the time?
Oh, definitely. I actually wore one myself that I had made like the night before. So, I do a lot of little projects too. If there's like a party or something, I do some fascinators as well. But mine, I wore all navy, which is my signature color. And I also had like a navy fascinator that I pinned into my hair that had 2 blue roses on it. So like navy roses. It was really gorgeous.
Right. And who are some of your fashion icons?
Well, growing up, I think I really enjoy, like, sometimes when I talk about those influences, I was really influenced by a few of the different early sportswear designers, and I think everyone would say, like, Coco Chanel's, like, simple classic designs that we still use today are always very influential. And what she was really designing for back at that time was, like, this newly emerging modern woman, the woman who isn't wearing corsets, who isn't fainting, by getting all dressed and having someone else help her dress, also tons and tons of layers. It was really about this sportswear, clean, walk around and travel maybe and that sort of thing.
Right,
so
easy to function, right.
Right, exactly, the function, the wearability of that garment instead of how ornate it was or what it was made out of. She started using things like jersey and things of that in her clothing, which we still use today. Also, like the simple black dresses, that was really great too. And so I was always really influenced by these, like, very almost simple, but just so, I want to call it darling. These really simple, clean looks that just, when you walk into a room, they just, people come and they're like, wow, that really works. Sometimes having that a little bit of understatement is wonderful. But then on the other hand, some costume designers from, actually my icons too. Let's think about Grace Kelly and Audrey Hepburn, which I think a lot of people talk about too. I was always influenced by the movie Charade. That was one of my favorites with Audrey Hepburn in it. And she actually had some great like scarves and hats that she wore that really just like, I actually wrote a blog entry recently about how I found a hat form that was almost like this Givenchy one that she wore in that movie. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm going to make my own of that. So it was really fun and a cute project.
Is your blog on your website?
Yep, and I have another link to it from the website
as well. Tell us the name of your website.
Oh, so it's lindsaymaholland.com. I would say like Lindsay with an E. So I think we've already, do you want me to spell it? Because that might be the easiest.
Yes.
LINDSEYMULLHOOLAND.com.
Okay, great. And they can find your blog on that website.
Right, exactly.
And I know you also do quite a bit of volunteer and docent work at the museums. Which museums in Manhattan do you volunteer at?
I volunteer at France's Tavern, which is a colonial Revolutionary War, but then also museum, which is really fantastic, all the way downtown by South Ferry, but also the Mount Vernon Hotel and Gardens. And for both of my work that I do there, I'm actually really into history as well, so I always pull that into my clothing and my designs. And my inspiration, and I do a lot of research too. But between my two things, I actually work generally with grades 2nd through 4th grade, which is really fun and invigorating, and they have so many questions, and it's so great and great energy. But I teach them basically about history in New York, generally ranging between colonial New York to about the 1830s, which is really wonderful.
That's terrific. It's wonderful to see a young person really getting involved in teaching our youth about the history of New York and the Francis Tavern, which is downtown by Wall Street, and the Mount Vernon Hotel Museum are both 18th century properties, which there are very few of them left in New York. So that's terrific that you're involved in that, and it's interesting to hear you talk about movies. The Great Gatsby is now this. It just came out, and I think it's going to be a phenomenon in people really, reviving parties and that style and period. So it's kind of fun. Right. I think it's all related, the fashion and the displays about ourselves.
Right. Actually, there have been several parties that I've been invited to this year that have been 20th parties, and of course that style is fantastic. But we also, I always love parties for like Derby Day too. So when we get out those hats and things like that, which recently passed, so it's always great to be involved in these little fashion things that pop up too, right?
Right, and all sorts of things start to happen. They revive various cocktails, like the mint julep, which is a big Derby Day cocktail, but it's also a big cocktail of the 20s. So, and I think that'll be the big Great Gatsby fun thing. Great. So, tell us what's coming up in your company next. What are you up to now, or do you prepare for the next season?
Yep, I'm preparing for the next season, but I'm also working a lot because we're doing a lot of different things for spring and summer, which is great. I'm actually starting to work more into suiting as well. So mostly I'm focusing on dresses because I love like a great dress to wear from work or to work to evening. But I'm also wanting to start in suiting and also doing some scarves as well, so a few accessories to take on to, kind of like the women's workday sort of thing as well. So.
And so is the bulk of your business at this point private clients, or how are you managing your distribution? What's the nature of your business?
I work a lot with private clients. A lot of I've started out with is word of mouth, which actually has been surprisingly great, and there have been some really great influential people behind it who have really enjoyed working with. And I work with a lot of professional women who enjoy the services I provide as well, which is to do fittings and things of that sort. And actually, I travel to them. In my first career, I worked in real estate, and I had actually been on the go day to night, and that was like how I had this one specific dress. And so I'd always be on the go all day, but then also it's really great because if you're busy and you have a lot of, meetings and schedules, I can go in and meet with you and do a consultation. We bring swatches and basically work client to client with what sort of things they'd like. And actually do something I call Design Your Week, which means that you might go away with a package for an entire work week worth of dresses for whichever season you choose. So it's actually really good and very easy, and a service that really I don't think is generally provided, because I feel like a lot of women buy off the rack at this point. So it's really great because some people have incredible ideas of what they might like for a cocktail party or even for a wedding dress, and it creates this like great project between the two of us to envision and to basically make a very spectacular dress, and I've always been impressed with the results, and it's been a great journey so far.
Is there a signature silhouette that you're trying to propagate and then sort of interpreting it for each customer? Let's say Dion von Furstenberg has a wrap dress that it's available in multiple statements that virtually any woman could adopt if she adopts the wrap dress. When you say you have an afternoon to evening dress, is it a signature that you're trying to establish?
Yeah, I definitely think so. A lot of the silhouettes generally go for something that's like a shift dress. So generally I like to do things for spring and summer sleeveless, which means that you can pair it with, I don't know, your like a shawl or a wrap, or with like a cardigan too, which is really great. You can mix and match with accessories, but also it's appropriate for work, but it's feminine too. So it has that great.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for being here. We have to wrap up. I'm sorry to rush you. We're here at The Style Show, a show about decorating, fashion, and fun. And thank you for joining us today on WTBQ.